Good morning, my friends. How is everyone doing this morning? It's a little raining here in New Jersey and New York area. Washington, I think we all woke up with a little rain. But we're here with our morning coffee for the soul. This is Sunday, February 25th, 2018. And today's topic is anxiety. Why are we going to talk about anxiety? Well, it's very interesting when we pick this topic and we talk about why so many people talk about anxiety and why are we really experiencing so much anxiety in our lives. Who here, and we can all make comments, we can always leave anything here on our comments, but do you know anyone who experiences severe anxiety or just a little bit? Is it something that is just intrinsic to human beings? Is it something that we all experience? Or is it something that you have to go through something in order to experience anxiety? And some people may not have any anxiety throughout their lives. Well, it's interesting because when Paul, back 2,000 years ago, he wrote in his letter that all of us, and he says, why are you so anxious? Do not be anxious in nothing. Do not be anxious in anything. When he says that, and we talk about anxiety being, anxiety being a century disease, a century illness. Well, this has been going on for 2,000 years. So it absolutely is not just an anxiety. It is something that has been going on for all these really millenniums, and it continues to be. And he had written a letter to the Philippians back in the day when he was actually in Rome. He was actually incarcerated in Rome. And interesting enough, Paul wrote about anxiety. And in his letter to the Philippians, he does say, do not be anxious on anything. In regards to anything that might happen to you, do not let anxiety enter you. So if Paul says that, we have to wait a little bit. And why do we continue to experience so much anxiety in our lives? Well, anxiety has a lot to do with this illusion that we have control about everything. Once we begin to try to control things that are uncontrollable, once we begin to control people or the time, then we get into a little bit of trouble. Most of our anxieties has to do with us trying to control the future or trying to control people's actions or reactions. So think about it. Every time that you're anxious, anything that your mind is preoccupied, the word itself, preoccupation, means that your mind is already occupied prematurely. That means that something is about to happen. It hasn't happened yet, but you are putting that weight of this uncertain future on your shoulders, on the now. When Jesus said, to each day its own troubles, and we'll see in Matthew's when Jesus says, let each day has its own evils, its own troubles, its own happenings, and concentrate on them. If we are not to listen to the psychologists, to our friends, to spiritual guides, we ought to listen to Jesus. When he says, let each day has its, develop and deal with its own troubles of each day. And of course, he goes on to say, look at the birds in the sky. Look at the birds that they don't store any food. They don't have any permanent places of living. Yet they get fed. Yet they live. They go on. Food is provided for them. Look at the flowers in the field. Look how beautiful they are. They go, they wither, they die, then they are reborn. And when you think about this, and he even said, even Solomon in his splendor and his most majestic times doesn't compare to the flowers in the field. So if we are not flowers or birds, think about how much Jesus will provide and care for us. Now, anxiety, like I said, it's the illusion that we have control about everything. And when we want to control something that is not yet happening, then our system goes into this stressful mode. Who here has heard the phrase fight or flight, right? This is a response. It's a physiological response to stress, to an anxious situation. So is stress, is anxiety always always unhealthy? Of course not. We have to have some anxiety and some stress to warn us from trouble, to warn us from dangerous situations, so we know what to do. But this fight or flight situation is you encounter, I don't know, you're walking down the street and someone just is walking too close to you, behind you. You get this anxious feeling, and then you feel, do I turn around and deal with the situation and see who it is, or do I start walking fast and get myself out of the situation? And we have all these fight or flight situations, but a lot of it is because we feel vulnerable. The minute we feel vulnerable, we have to put this fight or flight, or it happens instantaneously, whether we want it or not. We will feel this because we're stressful, but we're stressed, but we're only stressed because we're vulnerable. So some people say, oh, there are some people that can get me so anxious. Just by them walking near me, I start getting anxious. Well, and then you develop this fight or flight situation, but you see, you become trained to develop this in situations that are not emergent situations. You already knew this was coming. So why do you continue to put yourself in a situation where you are vulnerable if you already know what is to come? So you don't have these ups and downs in your system. The best thing to do is to be prepared, to arm yourself. And Paul says in his same letter to the Philippians, the best way to arm ourselves is prayer, is to ask and to seek God for counsel. And we know the Spirit's, excuse me, we know the Spirit is centers. People that have a healthy participation, when they really surrender themselves to the studies, when they really surrender themselves to the charitable cause as well, their stress level goes down, their anxieties go down. Because once we learn that the soul is always going to exist, that we are always going to exist, that we don't have this 80, 90, 100 years old time frame to get everything done. Once we really understand that, we have all the time in the world to get all of the things that we want to get done. Someday we will be doctors of everything, as Jesus was. Jesus had a doctorate in everything. Think about it. Here in this world, we might have a master's degree, we might have a bachelor's, we might have a doctor's degree in one subject, two subjects, perhaps three. Jesus had it in all. He had perfect knowledge of all subjects. So why are we so anxious to know everything, to do everything? And the problem is, we put so much pressure on ourselves. And when we see when Kardec codified all of the books, you don't see many references. Actually, I have not yet seen any references of him being so stressed that he wanted. There are some references where he was stressed in a situation where he said, is it worth it? And of course, we know a story of the bookbinder, if anyone wants to look at the story. It's very interesting. But sometimes he said, is it worth it? Am I doing the right thing? But he was never so overwhelmed that he said, oh, it's too much. I have to get this book done today and today and today. He said, let me sit down. Let me do this one thing at a time. And we have this tremendous problem with doing things one thing at a time. We want to do it all at once. And the problem is, when you divide your attention among so many things, it's impossible to get it all right. And you have to come back and keep repeating things. And when you think that you can control all your activities, that's when you get in trouble. When you begin to believe that putting more pressure on yourself will make you go faster or do things, resolve problems of the future, you go into this problem with your own physiological components. You start feeling the stress. Who here has ever felt as if the world were on their shoulder? As if everybody was dumping problems onto them? As if The problems of your husband, your wife, your children were also your problem. And you see, we have to be very careful to not be so proud or arrogant even to believe that we will be saviors of everyone, because we will not. Once our kids grow and once they begin to make their own decisions, it's impossible for us to decide for them. And that's when we start getting into trouble, when we want to make our children's decision when they are perfectly capable of doing their own decisions. There is a little bit of arrogance there. Oh, you have to be what I want you to be. Sometimes we want to control our husbands or our wives, even though when we met them, we knew exactly how they were. And all of a sudden, we want to change people. And that is the most stressful thing that we can do to ourselves. This anxiety that we're always looking for something to change, but rarely do we look at us to change. Some people want to lose weight, and they can't lose weight. This is an interesting one, because a lot of people want to lose weight, and all of a sudden they find themselves, I can't lose weight. I'm doing everything to lose weight. I'm taking every pill that's on the market. I'm going to the gym rigorously. I am doing everything. I'm not eating. And then I keep gaining weight. Well, the problem is the anxiety that goes into your wish to be thin usually will alter your body and will make you gain weight. You see, sometimes you're acting against your very own goal because you're so anxious of that thing. And you're not allowing it to move naturally. Sometimes we want to be a great singer, and we were so anxious about it that our voice starts cracking at each practice. It's not about the singing. It's not about the losing weight. It's not about the knowledge. Some people want to read so many books at once, and then you ask them, what was that all about? And they can't tell you. Why? Because they're so hungry for knowledge. They're so hungry for knowing it all at once that they forget that the very thing that they should learn has to be learned in its own time. Again, Jesus' words, to each day its own troubles. We want to do it all. We want to all of a sudden have this one incarnation to have everything done, to do all our checklists. And that, again, causes so much stress. There's a big difference between insist and persist. Are you guys people that are insistent? Are you those people that insist a lot? Or are you the type that is persistent? The type that persists quite a bit? If we know the difference, that can help us quite a bit. You see, insistence, it's when we want to try something in the same way, but it only works in a short time. For example, if someone comes to your house and you want them to try a different food or to try something that you cook, you could insist. They might say, no, I don't want it. And then you say, oh, please, I insist, try it. And you keep asking or you keep offering in the same way. You see, there is no change in strategy. Insistent means you keep doing the same thing, trying to get something accomplished. And we do this in our lives. The problem is this will cause a lot of anxiety if we keep insisting on the same thing that doesn't fit your life. How do we know this doesn't fit my life? Maybe this person that I'm dating is not the person for me, but I keep insisting. I keep doing the same thing, having the same behavior, hoping for something to happen. This could happen in short time. Sometimes we need to insist, but it works short term. It will work only in the beginning. Now, for you to persist, it's when you change strategies. When you have a goal and you do not let your anxiety get inside of you. So when you're not anxious, see, people that insist a lot, they become anxious because they keep doing the same thing over and over, and they want that to happen, and they keep doing it, and things are not changing, and they start feeling all this anxiety. But when they persist, they want a goal, they want to accomplish a goal, and then they try different strategies. They do things differently in order for that to happen. And they see this as a long-term goal. They don't see that it has to be done today. So if you want to go back to school, or if you want to start studying, let's say, I have to study the Spirit's book, but every time that I open this book, something happens and I never finish. Well, you can start insisting on it. Of course, you're going to insist, I'm going to read it, I'm going to read it every day, a certain time. But then it gets to a point where you start feeling so anxious that you want to give up. I don't want to study anymore. But when you change that to persistence, and you start changing your strategy, maybe I can't read the Spirit's book alone, but I can join a study group at my center. That's persistence. I will study this book. Every day at a different time, I'm going to study, or I'm going to read a different paragraph. That's a strategy. That's persistence. I'm not going to set goals that are so high that I'm going to give up because I'm putting so much pressure on myself. Who of us puts so much stress on their own self that we start to give up? To each day, its own troubles. Again, we go back to Jesus' words. And it's funny because Chico Xavier was the same way. He wrote over 400 books, psychographed. Now think about it. At no point you see him so anxious that he needs to begin the next one. He let things happen naturally. And this is on top of all the charity that he did, all of the letters that he wrote for all these mothers that sought words from their children. So much he did. And you don't see him speak so fast that he needs to get everything out at once. You don't see Chico Xavier so anxious that he needs to constantly go to the doctor for anxiety problems. Now, most anxiety do derive from spiritual causes. A lot of anxiety comes obviously from a spirit that has been in situations, in anxious situations, that translate into our emotions. So they're always responding emotionally to situations, and then their behavior is being anxious. Oh, so that's predetermined, Deborah? Is that what you're saying? Not really. Joanna de Angelis says that. However, Emmanuel says something a little bit more hopeful in a way. Emmanuel will say that if we were born already prone to anxiety, then it wouldn't be fair for us to be put in a classroom where we wouldn't be able to learn. And again, I'm paraphrasing both of them. So there is a healthy knowledge from both of them. Of course, we are the product of all of the people that we have been in our past lives. This is our best version today. At the same time, God is so graceful. God is so amazing. I love just saying that he's amazing because that's what he is. That he will not put us in a situation that we cannot learn. He will not give us all of the tools if the tools will not work for what we want to do. So that is why he would put someone that has some kind of experience in a situation in this lifetime that they can learn from that experience in the past. You see, that's the beauty and the justice of the whole reincarnation plan. Now, excuse me, we are almost done with our anxiety or topic on anxiety, but I used to, it's very good for us to remember that there's perseverance. Perseverance is very much aligned with resignation. How many of us will see an athlete, now the Olympics were on, and sometimes you see these young athletes with a perfect body, there's nothing wrong, they're just breaking world records all the time, and we say, wow, they're just great and they're amazing, and they're like that because they're perfect, because their bodies are perfect, they're conditioned to be perfect for that sport. And then we can see Olympics for those who have some type of disability. People that were born without legs or they cannot see, and they're doing the same thing as those athletes with a perfect body. So how interesting is that? Once we accept the things that we cannot change, if there is some kind of expiation and you were born in a certain way that is not favorable to having let's put an easier lifestyle, well, it is your choice. You can rebel and you can become an extreme anxious person. You can bad mouth, and you can just throw all this negative energy on the things that you do not have, or that you were not born a quote unquote perfectly capable person, right? Or you can resign. You can renounce all of these um, anxious forms of control that you want to have on something you cannot control. And you can look at your body as, again, perfectly capable. And you can say, well, even if I'm born this way, if I'm too short, too tall, no legs, I can't see, or I can't hear, or I have a mental disability, I can still accept and take all of the other things in my life that I can do. So we see this as a perfect example on the Olympics. People with a body that is complete, let's say it that way, competing and achieving amazing results, and Olympics where people have no legs, or they cannot see, or they have some type of mental disability, and they will be any of those many times. So it's a question of, can I control if I'm born with no legs? No, I can't control that. That is a fact. Can I control what I do with that situation? Yes, I can. I can control. I can either put prosthetics, or I can choose not to, but I still have two arms, or I can still think. I can control the things that are within my reach. But there are some things I cannot. So when I rebel on those things, or when I try to control the uncontrollable, it is certain that I'm going to go into this state of anxiety. So let's think about it. Anxiety. It's an illusion of control. Usually that has to do with time. You want to control something that has not yet happened, but you want it to be today. And usually in our minds, everything is already wrong. It didn't work, right? So you want to take the future, bring it up to the present, and control the situation. Obviously, we can't do that because we can't control the future. We can control much of the results in the future by our actions today. Or we want to control people. I want to change people. I want to change how they look at me, how they talk to me. I want to change my husband, my kids. That's a problem because we will never be able to control others. We can control ourselves. Oh, we can control others as if you are put in a superiority position and there are your employees, you can control them to a certain level until they decide they don't want to be controlled anymore. So it's a very big illusion. So let's think about it. You want to insist or you want to persist? Again, Paul has said, do not let your anxious feelings take a part of you. There is no room for anxiety in our lives. And that's what Paul says. He knew a little thing or two about this. I mean, he was in jail when he said that, in Rome, just about to die. And he sends a letter to the Philippians to say, do not be anxious about anything. Now, it's interesting because he didn't say just be anxious about having to go to jail or be anxious about your job, be anxious about anything, any specific thing that he was going through. He said about anything and all things, do not be anxious. So this is an exercise. Is this easy for us to do? Well, they say the anxiety is the illness of the century, but Paul was saying this 2,000 years ago. So we know it's been more than a century that this has been an issue. And we need to talk about it. We need to always find means to beat this illusion that we have of controlling time in people. And again, when we go to the Spiritual Center and when we start studying Kardec and we start studying this very word, anxiety, in the Greek roots, it actually means divided. So you're always divided of something that you have control and something you don't have control. But when you see, what can I do? You know, what can I do today? Not tomorrow. I can't change the past. But when I say, what happened? What can I learn from what happened in my life? What can I do with it today? And let me pray. Let me ask God what my heart desires. Do you think that he would do anything against what is best for us? God is good and God is just. It is impossible for this Father to give us anything contrary to our progress. So let's think about it, friends. Let's start looking at our lives today, and let's start exercising this faith, because a lot of anxiety has to do with our diminishing faith, our lack of faith even. It's kind of a scale. The more anxious you are, the less faith you're exercising. The more faith you're exercising, the more surrender to God's will, the less anxiety will be in your life. So stop today and see how anxious, and that'll have a excuse me, a very clear correlation with your anxiety. So if you're high in faith and you're surrendering and you're doing your work and you're praying and you're learning and you're getting involved, then your anxiety will go down naturally. But if you're so anxious, you bet that you're not working a lot of the aspects of your faith. So this is my message I wanted to pass to you. If you have any ideas on new topics, on anything for next week, I'll be here again every Sunday, 8:30 a.m. Eastern Standard Time here in New York time. Thank you all. And now I'm going to say hi to a few of you. Thank you so much. Let's see who's here. Okay, we have Valeria. We have Sosa. Good morning, friends. Good morning. So important issue. Absolutely. A very, very important issue. We all have to really study this anxiety feelings that we all get. Grazi Souza is here. Good morning, sunshine. She says, oops. I don't know what I did. Okay. Good morning, sunshine. Marco Souza is also watching. Many pessoas watching. Fábio Malaquias. Elsa saying, good morning to everyone. Good morning to you, my friend. Marco, excuse me, Marcelo. Good morning, Marcelo. Nina Duarte is watching. Valeria says, anxiety is the worst enemy. Excuse me. And friends, you can always ask questions. I can, if it's within my knowledge, I'll absolutely answer. So you can always ask any kind of questions, anything you're going through. We can always leave here in the comments, okay? And absolutely, it's the worst enemy, because if you think about it, most of the deaths has to do with anxiety. Most people die because of anxiety, being in the root of whatever they're going through. If you think about anything, accidents usually happens because somebody was too anxious. Somebody wanted to get there too fast. Diseases, most diseases begin with the feelings of anxiety. Sometimes we get so anxious about not getting sick that we get sick thinking about it. Think about how anxiety is such, it's such, how do you say, it just sabotages you. When you become anxious about getting something, usually you don't get it because the anxiety just kind of sabotages it. So it is the worst enemy. Absolutely, Valerie. Cynthia Peebles, thank you, Cynthia, for watching. Thank you. Good job, what Costa saying. Thank you very much, everyone, for watching. Now I go to my Portuguese version of this page on my own website. But remember to listen to Kardec Radio. We have the app now. You can just download it on your iPhones. And it's a great tool. There's so many shows, so many. Vanessa's always, every night, she's here at 11. And it's amazing, everything that we learn from all the books that we choose to talk about here. I always try to bring a little bit of the psychological aspects to a topic together with the spiritist part of this, so we can make this really good combination. Any questions, any comments, you guys are always very welcome to do. Thank you very much, friends. I will see you next Sunday.